Welcome students. In English literature, in second term, we will start with lesson number 4, 3-act table. Here this chapter is written in first person, and here our narrator, he jumps to conclusion without ascertaining the facts. So is it normal to jump to conclusion without checking the facts? Let's see. The story is about a sailor who describes his voyages, his experience once when he was sitting in an inn. The story starts. The talk in the coffee room was about ghosts. "I wouldn't advise you to believe all those," said a clean-shaven man who had been listening without speaking much. "You see, when a sailor gets ashore, he is expected to have something good to tell, and his friends would be rather disappointed if he had not." So in an inn room, inn is basically any hotel. Earlier they used to be called as hotels. So there two people, they were talking about something. One was clean shaven and other one was a narrator. So they were talking. Clean shaven man said that he wouldn't believe if the sailors, they did not have any stories about their experiences. "Oh, sailors are very prone to see visions," interrupted another man firmly. Our narrator says that yes, sailors are prone to imaginations. "I have been at sea 30 years, and only unpleasant incident of that kind occurred in a quiet English countryside," said the clean-shaven man. So the clean-shaven man says that he had been in the on sea, but for 30 years, and only once he faced some unpleasant incident, which he faced when he had visited the English countryside. And he continued with his story. "I was a young man at the time," he began. "I had just come back from China. My family was away, so I invited myself to stay with an uncle. When I reached the place, I found it closed, so I decided to put up at the Royal George, a very decent inn." So clean-shaven man, our narrator, he says that when he was young, he had just come back from China, and he thought of going to his family. But when he went, as the family was away, so he decided to visit his uncle. But when he reached there, he found the place was closed. So he thought of going to an inn, a restaurant, a hotel. The name was Royal George. "The next morning, after a late breakfast, I set off for a brisk day's walk. The day was bright and frosty." Narrator says that next day, after checking in the inn, he had a late breakfast, and then he went for a cool walk, and the day was sunny but bit frosty, that is, it was bit cold. "I lunched luxuriously on bread and cheese in a small inn and decided to go a little further before turning back. When I found I had gone far enough, I turned up at a lane at right angles to the road I was passing, to find my way back by another route, but this had several turnings of its own. So when he had lunch, he decided to take a walk. So when he took a walk, he found that he had come quite further from the place he was staying. So he took a right angle to the lane, and then he found that he has lost himself. But this had several turnings of its own. I was soon caught up in a fog and wandered about miserably, occasionally shouting on the chance of being heard by some passing shepherd. Luckily, I heard footsteps approaching me." So when our narrator, he took a wrong turn, the weather was also getting up very cold, it was getting foggy, and then he wandered, he roamed around aimlessly, and he was miserable because he was a bit tired, and he occasionally shouted for help. And after some time, he was lucky enough because he heard someone's footsteps approaching him. He was elated, he was happy when he heard someone approaching him. A sturdy-looking countryman, hearing my shout, walked back with me for nearly a mile and gave me instructions how to reach the closest village some 3 miles distant. So when the footsteps he heard, a sturdy-looking man, a localite, he approached him, and after hearing a shout, and he came to him, and they both walked together for some time, and the local person, the countryman, he gave the indications to the nearest village to the narrator. When the countryman, he approached our narrator, and then our narrator asked how he could reach the closest village, and he was told by the countryman that it was 3 miles distant. They walked to some miles together, and then to our countrymen the 3 miles sounded like 10. Why? Because our narrator, the sailor, he was already tired. The weather has changed from sunny to frosty. It was getting very cold, and it was getting very foggy too. A little way off from the road, I pointed to a dimly lit window, but my companion shuddered and looked round him uneasily. So when our narrator, he looked from the road and pointed towards one of the houses nearby, that why not, let's go to that house. Then the local countryman, he shuddered. He was a bit anxious and he looked very uneasy. It's no good there, he said hastily. Why not? I asked. There is something there, sir, he replied. Some say it's a poor mad thing. Others say it's a kind of an animal. But whatever it is, it ain't good to see. So when our narrator, he asked, there is a house nearby, why can't we go there? Hearing this, the local countryman, he shuddered, he became uneasy and he became anxious, and he replied that it is not good. He quickly replied. To that our narrator, he asked that why not? It's there, that's a house, we can always go there, because narrator was already too tired. The countryman, he replied that there was something wrong. Some of the people, the local people, they believe that some poor mad thing lived there, and some of the other, they believe that it's kind of an animal there. But whatever it is, it's not good to go there. Well then, I said, good night. I followed the road that the man had indicated until it again split into 3. I was now cold and tired, so walked slowly back towards the house until I came to a small gate. So after discussion, or after talking to the local countryman, our narrator, he departed from him and he followed the road which was indicated by the countryman. But after walking some distance, he found that the road split into 3. By this time, our sailor was very tired and he was feeling very cold. So he went back to the house which the countryman had said that it had something weird about it. So when he reached his gate, he knocked it. Opening it cautiously, I walked up a long path which led to the door. There was no light and no sound from within. I knocked lightly upon the door. So after reaching the gate, sailor went to the door and path there, and there was no light and there was no sound coming from the house. So he found it a bit odd, and reaching the door, he knocked it. I waited for a couple of minutes and then knocked again. The door opened suddenly, and the tall, bony old woman holding a candle stood before me. After once knocking the door, our sailor waited for some time, for a couple of minutes, and then he knocked again. And after some time, a tall, bony means or very quite thin, holding a candle, she came out. What do you want? She demanded gruffly. Gruffly as in a rough voice. I've lost my way, I said. I want to get to Asheville. Don't know it, said the old woman. So when the door was open, he saw a tall, thin old woman holding a candle, and she was very rough, she was a bit rude. When a sailor said that I have lost my way and I want to go to Asheville, could you please direct me the way? She said, I do not know. So what do we understand? What is a character sketch? If we ask you, what would you write? Was she friendly? Was she forthcoming? So she was very unfriendly, she was a very rude person, she was very rough. She was about to close the door when a man emerged from a room at the side of the hall and came towards us. Asheville is 15 miles far, he said slowly. If you will direct me to the nearest village, I shall be grateful, I remarked. When the lady very rudely said that she doesn't know the way to the nearest village, Asheville, at that time she was about to close the door. A man came from the room behind the lady, from inside the house, and then he said that Asheville is 15 miles away. To that, sailor said, if you direct me to the nearest village, then I'll be more than happy, I'll be very grateful to you. The nearest place is 3 miles off, he said. If you will give me the pleasure of your good company, I will make you as comfortable as I can. When the sailor asked that you please could you direct me to the nearest village, I'll be very grateful. To that, the man who emerged from the house, he said, it is 3 miles off, but It will be our pleasure if you would like to stay with us, and I will try my best to make you comfortable. I hesitated. They were certainly a queer looking couple, queer as odd looking, and the gloomy hall with the shadows thrown by the candle looked hardly more present than the darkness outside. When the man in the house he invited the sailor felt bit odd because they were very odd couple. The lady, she was unfriendly, she was unforthcoming, whereas the man was very friendly. In fact, he invited the sailor to his house so that he could take some rest, as our sailor was very tired and the weather was also not so good. So looking at the house inside, he found it very gloomy because there was no light or any candle lit inside. "You are very kind," I murmured. "But come in," he said quickly. "Shut the door, Anne." So when our sailor, he hesitated that you are being very kind, to that the man very politely, he said, asked our sailor to come inside the room and asked Annie, the lady, to shut the door off. Page number 25. Almost before I knew it, I was standing inside. I followed my host into the room and, taking the chair, warmed my frozen fingers at the fire. When the man who emerged from the house, he invited the sailor to come to his house, and sailor couldn't refuse, and he followed the host. And there was a fire lit there, and as sailor was very tired and he was feeling very cold, he went to the fire and tried to warm himself. "Dinner will be ready," said the old man. I bowed and he left the room. A minute after, I heard his and the old woman's voice, and I fancied a third. So the man, he said that dinner will be ready soon, and he left the room along with that old woman. And then after some time, he could hear a third person's voice too. Before I had finished my inspection of the room, he returned and announced, "There will be 3 of us at dinner, we 2 and my son. I suppose you don't mind dining in the dark," he said abruptly. Before he could look around in the room, the host, the old man, he returned, and he said that there will be 3 of them at the dinner: sailor, old man, and old man's son. And then he asked, "I hope the sailor doesn't mind." "Not at all," I replied, hiding my surprise. "But really, I am afraid I am intruding, if you'll allow me." After that, when the sailor said there will be 3, then sailor said that no, he doesn't mind. But then he apologized that hopefully he was not interfering in anything. He waved his huge hands. "It's seldom we have company. My son's eyes are bad and he can't stand the light. Ah, here is Annie." When the sailor, he politely tried to deny the food, then he said, "I hope I'm not interfering anything." To that, the old man, he said that we rarely, seldom means rarely. He waved his hand. The old man said that they rarely get any company, and then he gave an excuse that his son's eyes was bad and then they cannot stand the light. And then Annie, she enters the room. The old woman entered and began to lay the cloth, while my host, taking a chair the other side of the fireplace, sat looking silently into the fire. When the old woman, she entered the room, she tried to lay out the table, and the old man, he took a chair and sat next to the fire, while the old lady, she placed 3 chairs, and after that she left. The old man rose from his chair, placed a large screen in front of the fire, and slowly extinguished the candles. So once the table was laid out, the old man, he got up and he put the screen in front of the fire and he blew the candles. "Blind man's holiday," he said, and groping his way to the door, opened it. Somebody came back into the room with him and took a seat at the table. The strangest voice I have ever heard broke the silence. The old man, he said, "The blind man's holiday." Why? Because he wanted to sound it casual, that they were having a picnic sort, or they were having an enjoyment there. And then groping his way, that is because it was dark. The old man had blew the candles, so he could not see clearly. So he opened the door, and along with old man, a new member entered the room. And then he asked in a very strange voice to sailor, "A cold night," it said slowly. "Yes," I replied. It was somewhat difficult eating in the dark, and it was obvious from the behavior of my invisible companions that they were not used to the dining under such circumstances as I was. We ate in silence until the old woman came into the room with some sweets. So the new member who had come along with the old man, he asked a cold night. To that our sailor replied yes. And sailor could witness, he could see that the old man and the new member, they were facing with problem to eat in the dark. And he could see that they were not familiar with it as the sailor was, because sailor was used to of staying in the dark in the sea and with just moonlight, whereas the way the old man and the new member, they were fumbling with the cutleries, so he could make out that they were not used to. And then the lady, she enters with some sweets. Are you a stranger here? Inquired the curious voice again. I replied in the affirmative. I murmured something about being lucky in stumbling upon such a good dinner. There was something so strange about the whole business. I could see a pair of wild eyes shining like a cat's. The new member, he inquired, are you a stranger here? To that our sailor, he replied yes. And then he said, he being so lucky that in such a weather he could find at the house and such good dinner. And then he found it a bit strange. He thought that some wild pair of cat-like eyes were looking at him, and he became a bit uneasy. With a growing sense of uneasiness, I pushed my chair back. It caught the rug, and in my efforts to disentangle it, the screen in front of the fire fell over with a crash. In the flickering light of the fire, I saw the face of the creature opposite. Man or beast? Which was it? In the mere red glow of the fire, the face looked more devilish than before. So when the sailor, he felt a bit uneasy, he tried to get up, and then he tried to push his chair back, and then while he was trying to get up his chair, it got in the rug, and the chair fell down. And when the chair fell down, the screen which was in front of the fire, it also crashed, and in the glow of the fire he could see the face of the creature. And then he was taken aback that whether the man was man or the beast, because probably the man, the new stranger person, he was looking a bit weird. So looking at the devilish face, sailor got more scared. I beg your pardon, said I, but I have accidentally overturned the screen. Allow me to replace it. Very politely, sailor said that I am sorry that while I was trying to disentangle the chair, I accidentally overturned, or the screen fell down. Please allow me to make it correct. No, said the old man gently. Let it be. We have had enough of the dark. I'll give you a light. To that the old man said, let it be, because we have already had enough of it, because old man and the new member, the strange person, they were also were finding it a bit difficult to eat in the dark. He struck a match and slowly lit the candles. Then I saw that the man opposite had a gaunt, weird face with only one eye. When the old man, he said, let the screen be down, no need to put it back, he struck a match and he lit the candle. And when there was light there, our sailor saw the man, the new stranger. He had a gaunt, means thin and bony. He was a very thin person, bit with weird face. That is, he was having just one eye. Page number 26. My son was injured some years ago in the burning house, said the old man. Since then we have lived a very retired life. When you came to the door, his voice trembled. So when the old man, he lit the candle, and sailor, he could see the face of the stranger, that the person, he had just one eye and he was very thin. He was a bit taken aback, and to that the old man, he started giving explanation that his son was injured some time back ago in a burning house. Since then nobody visited them, and then they lived a very retired, a very isolated life. And then he gave the explanation that when the sailor, he came at their door, and then he stopped, he trembled in his voice. I thought, said the son, that it would be better for me not to come to the dinner table. But it happens to be my birthday, and my father would not hear of my dining alone. So we hit upon this foolish plan of dining in the dark. The old man could not continue as his voice trembled. Then the son, he continued. He said that he thought that it would be better that he would not come to the dinner table so that he would not scare the newcomer who had come to the house, that is the sailor. But then he explained that father and son, they both came up with the plan that they could eat food in the dark. I am sorry I startled you. I am sorry, said I, as I reached across the table and gripped his hand, that I am such a fool, but it was only in the dark that you startled me. When the son, he gave explanation that they thought of having the dinner in the dark because it was his birthday, and his father refused to let his son dine in alone in dark. So now when they were sitting in the dark, the man, that son, he said sorry that he startled, or the new sailor. Our sailor said that he was also sorry, and he held the hand of the newcomer or the son, and then he said that I was foolish, that I was startled, or when I saw your face in the dark, that was only which scared me. We never see a friend, said the old man apologetically, and the temptation to have company was too much for us. Besides, I don't know what else you could have done. Old man, he said that we never see any friend, and then it was too much of a temptation because it was his son's birthday, and it was good to have someone's company other than his son and Annie. And then he said, then other than that, what sailor could do, because he was tired and it was a bit foggy outside, and he did not have any way to go anywhere nearby, as the nearest village was 3 miles and Asheville was around 10. We were soon as merry a party as I have ever seen. The night passed by rapidly. We could hardly believe our ears when, during a lull in the conversation, a lull in the conversation means a silence in the conversation, the clock in the hall struck 12. So, when the explanation was given, they started, when they became friends, they enjoyed the party, and then when the clock struck 12, they realized that they have been enjoying, or they were having a good time. A last toast before we retire, said my host. The old man rose and gazed proudly at his disfigured son. To the health of the children, my boy saved, he said. When the clock struck 12, the host, that is the old man, he got up and he raised his toast as it was his son's birthday, and he said that to the health of the children, the boy which his son had saved. So probably the old man's son, he had saved few children from the burning house. Now we come to the end of the chapter. So please try to read the chapter and find out the character sketches of the man, old man, son, and the sailor and Annie. The old man was very friendly, he made the sailor very comfortable, whereas the son, he was brave, he was gentle, he was generous. How about a sailor? And then Annie was very unfriendly, and so on.